Coming up on Hot Hardware, we're talking the latest in processors from Intel and AMD, plus Apple may be evil. Hello, welcome to Hot Hardware, where we talk the hottest tech. I'm Maya Zakhtar with Dave Altavilla and Marco Chiappetta. Let's get right to it. Dave, Intel has released a dual-core Atom processor. I think it's running on Pine Trail. Could you break down the situation there?
Yeah, Pine Trail's the code name for the platform. The processor is actually Pine View. There's, a sort of a pine freshness going on there. Yeah, actually, anybody who's ever played with a netbook or owned a netbook with an Atom processor, and let's face it, it's a large majority of the netbooks in the market, has probably felt at one time or another that they need a little bit more performance out of that thing. And so the nice thing is Intel started coming out with some dual-core Atom processors with hyper-threading, so 2 threads per core for 4 threads total, so a little bit of multi-threaded processing capability. But very recently, they also goosed up the clock speed. Previously Atom processors were maxing out at about 1.66 gigahertz. Now we've got a 1.8 gigahertz dual-core Atom processor with hyper-threading, and I'm gonna pull out a prop here. This is an Asus notebook that I can't tell you too much about it, or I'd have to kill you. Okay. But it's got this new 1.8 gigahertz dual-core Atom processor, and feels a lot more responsive than your average netbook. Did
you get to run any official tests, unofficial tests to see how much faster it is?
I did. Put a few of the numbers up actually on HotHardware.com just yesterday, and just processor numbers, because we can't go into too much detail on the notebook yet, the netbook, excuse me. But yeah, it's on the average of about 10% faster in certain applications, and especially where multi-threading is required.
Do you know if we're going to see any price bumps in these netbooks? I mean, just because Intel comes out with a new processor doesn't mean it's going to be any cheaper. Are we going to see netbooks go up towards $700 again, or what do you think?
No, I think obviously the pressures on the manufacturers to keep netbooks in the $300 to $400 max kind of price range, maybe $500 if you include things like discrete graphics. This one happens to be infused with NVIDIA Ion and Optimus for simultaneous, or I should say dynamic switching rather, on the fly for the GPU for graphics and multimedia capabilities. So if you get things like that bolted into it, you'll be up around the higher end towards $500 or so. But you get into the $600 or $700 range, and you're really not talking netbook pricing anymore. You're talking notebook pricing, and the netbook manufacturers have to limbo under that bar and stay in the $300 to $400 range if they want that sweet spot.
All right, next up, AMD, known for its processors, are apparently getting into the children's television game with a show called Bobcat and Bulldozer. Wait, I'm being told by my producer that I'm completely wrong. Marco, could you please correct me and tell the audience what is this Bobcat and Bulldozer thing?
Sure. So Bobcat and Bulldozer are code names for 2 upcoming processor microarchitectures from AMD. Bobcat is a competitor to Intel's Atom, what Dave was just talking about, and Bulldozer is going to be a new high-end processor for clients and servers, things like that. So
what was leaked? It was like a roadmap?
Well, it wasn't actually leaked. AMD disclosed some details of what these 2 new processors, are going to be made of. So Bobcat is, like Atom, it's going to be a low-power processor design. But unlike Atom, it's going to be an out-of-order processor, which, sort of inherently is going to make it perform better, all other things being equal. So Bobcat's looking like it's going to be a low-power. They're saying there's going to be sub-1 watt configurations, out-of-order processor for netbooks that should, if the information that's been released so far, all comes true, significantly outperform Atom. So, netbooks should see a big performance boost once Bobcat hits towards the end of this year.
Do you know if AMD actually has any partners lined up to use Bobcat, or are they just hoping that somebody's going to pick them up, since Intel does have their new dual-core out?
So it's kind of too soon to say, any specific design wins for AMD. But they've had partners for the Neo already. I would assume you're going to see some based on Bobcat, and if its performance is as good as we think it's going to be, you're going to see design wins based on the processor.
What about Bulldozer?
So Bulldozer is going to be a totally new architecture for the higher end of the market. There's not as many details as there are for Bobcat, but AMD is doing something interesting. Intel has hyper-threading. And both companies have, true multi-core setups. Bulldozer is going to do something interesting. It's sort of a cross between hyper-threading and true dual-core, per module, where some parts of the chip are shared, some parts are discrete, and it allows them to make the chip smaller and lower power. And they're saying, it doesn't adversely affect performance. So they're saying 50% more throughput over current designs. So it should be very similar when it hits.
And do we have a release date, a timeline?
Nothing solid, but it should be towards the end of this year, maybe beginning of next year.
All right, pretty cool. And in more processor news, Intel is introducing a lower cost 6-core i7. Dave, what's the situation here?
Yeah, actually, anybody that's into high-end processors and the performance enthusiasts or maybe workstation professionals that are used to paying top dollar for the fastest machine on the planet that they can get their hands on knows that Intel's latest and greatest flagship usually almost always debuts at somewhere in the $1,000 to $1,100 range. And that's a lot for a single chip, just for the processor alone. You can get a real nice full system for that, with a more mid-range processor involved, of course. But Intel recently released a little bit of a price reduction on their Core i7 6-core processor, and the Core i7 970 is very much like the Core i7 980X, which is also their 6-core. It was the only 6-core available until now. This is a down clocked variant, a little bit slower clock speed, a 3.2 gigahertz Core i7 6-core. And it's also got one of the speeds and feeds on the chip a little bit slower. It doesn't make much difference in performance. The QPI link, Quick Path Interconnect link, is a little bit slower, 4.8 gig transfers per second versus 6.4. That doesn't make a whole lot of difference in performance. And the top-end clock speed, 3.2 gig stock speed versus 3.3 on the 980X, is not that much lower either. But the nice thing is it's $885, so you're in the neighborhood of $150, $200 less than the 980X. So
exactly
nice little
price reduction
there.
Are there any other trade-offs for the price?
Not really. And as a matter of fact, again, in multi-threaded applications especially, this processor competes real nice with the 980X. It's up there in the 90% range of the 980X performance, maybe even a little more, 95 in certain cases. And so, really, if you want to save a few bucks, grab one of these. And if you're really hell-bent on performance, overclock it a little bit, and you'll have 980X kind of performance.
And over in Apple land, Apple has managed to do something that's annoying people. There's a surprise. Apple has filed for a patent that would allow for monitoring and disabling certain iPhones. The EFF is upset. Marco, could you fill in the rest of this picture?
Yeah, sure. This patent application is actually really scary. So Congress sort of made jailbreaking legal recently, with the ruling, but Apple is still very against jailbreaking. So they filed for a patent that not only allows them to detect iPhones that have been jailbroken, but also to monitor biometric information of the phone's user. So they can track heartbeat, take pictures without the user's knowledge of both the user and the environment the phone's in,
Wow.
Record audio from the area. It's just this really kind of scary Big Brother kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've been following this story personally because I kind of know a little bit about law. And the thing about this whole patent situation for me is that they just file for the application. One, the PTO doesn't actually have, the Patent and Trademark Office doesn't actually have to give them the patent. That's the first thing. Second thing, just because they have the patent doesn't mean they'll actually use it. So I think that, I'm starting to think that people are kind of blowing this out of proportion. Do you think that, do either one of you guys think that Apple's actually going to execute on this patent? Or do you think this is something they would probably use and maybe even license to people like RIM or any Android manufacturer like Motorola? Because this is kind of, for them, for other people, kind of an exciting idea that they can actually monitor everything. Can you imagine Google getting their hands on this? They can actually hear what you're saying and bother to advertise to you. So Dave, what do you think?
I'll chime in on that a little bit. I think you're absolutely right, and people love a good story, a Big Brother story, especially to sink their teeth into. But what you have to remember here is Apple's patenting something. Whether or not they productize it is a whole nother question, and And then how does that product, come out in the market? What does it look like? This all could be some, for example, security feature. Now, there's going to be some people rioting when I say that, but this doesn't have to be something that can be invoked at will. Maybe there's some security level that gets access to this. Maybe this is, something that, government gets a warrant on or whatever, and we got to find a bad guy, and now we can tap into his phone, but you got to have a warrant to get at it. That kind of thing. Not that it can't be hacked. Certainly could be hacked by a bad guy or a good guy. But, we just don't know how this is going to shake out, if it shakes out at all. I think it's jumping to conclusions.
What do you think, Marco? Should people be freaking out? Should they be throwing out their iPhones right away?
No, they shouldn't be throwing out their iPhones right away. But I'm of the opinion, first, the patent may not get approved. So that's the first thing to consider. If it does, I don't know, maybe Apple would use it in some capacity. I don't think they're just willy-nilly going to record what users are doing. Perhaps they'll set up some sort of API where people can, program third-party security apps, as Dave mentioned, that could use these features. I'm more concerned literally, about hackers or somebody releasing an app that secretly collects data. It was recently on the App Store. I think it was, a 17-year-old kid released this simple app disguised as something else that actually turned the iPhone into, a wireless tethering device. And
that was
of course,
a flashlight application.
Flashlight application, yeah.
That was a really good and sneaky way. You're right. I mean,
Right.
This is a very real possibility that if it hooks into these APIs, assuming they can actually find the APIs, because I'm assuming Apple's not going to be like, you know what, tell you what, this is open like the iPod API, because this is a little bit more security-based. And then again, theoretically, when you use one of these products, it'll show you system level, this is trying to hook into this API. So,
yep.
And then again, we'll see. That just means that it looks like our phones are turning more and more and more into computers. So if you have an Android device, you have reason to be scared. If you have an iPhone, you have reason to be scared. If you have a Razor, you have no reason to be scared. Oh, what's that? I think I'm seeing a new device coming up. What is this?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at this in the near future. This is the Dell Streak, and we've got it in the labs right now, and it's a whole lot of fun. Could use a little update on the Android side of things. Froyo would be nice on this puppy, but nice device. I like it, and find out what Hot Hardware editor Dan Begun says about this one, and it's good stuff.
Is the review out already?
No, he's working on it now.
So we'll be yapping about this pretty soon. Marco, let's give the people something for watching us and listening to us just blather on. What can you possibly give away? I mean, I'm sure there's something, right?
Yeah, how about we run two contests? They're already running. In one contest, we're giving away 20 copies of the new game, well, relatively new game, Just Cause 2. All you have to do is come by the site and post in the news or in the forum.
So you're giving away 20 copies to one person?
No.
Oh.
20 winners.
Okay. So there's more than just 2 giveaways. This is like 21 giveaways. What's the other thing you're giving away?
Well, the other one is pretty exciting, too. We partnered with MSI, and we're giving away a high-end X58-based motherboard and 2 GeForce GTX 460 cards, in addition to 10 copies of Metro 2033 to 10 different winners.
So this motherboard, can it work with any of the processors we talked about today?
Yes, the Core i7 Dave showed, any socket 1366 Intel processor.
So all you have to do is win this contest, and your entire system will cost you like $800. That's actually pretty good. That's going to be one powerful machine. I'm assuming
Absolutely.
You can reuse a case. Is there anything else you guys like to add before we go?
Yes.
What's that?
Follow us, baby. Facebook /HotHardware, Twitter /HotHardware, and dig/.hardware.
.hardware? What was it?
HotHardware.
HotHardware. So
I'm brain dead. It's Friday.
So very easy. And that does it for this episode of Hot Hardware. You can find everything we talked about and more, and contest information at hothardware.com, not .hotware. I'm Maya's actor, Dave. Marco, thanks again for being here, and we will see everybody next week, right?
Thanks, I.
All right.
Yes.
So long, folks.